Okay, so I recently transitioned over from the Boss RC-300 to the Boss RC-505. I used the RC-300 for around 5 years and I felt that it was finally time to take my live looping setup to the next level. So this is where I got the RC-505. I needed some additional features and I also needed some additional tracks. I've now gigged the RC-505 for around 6 months now, and I'm going to tell you what I think of it compared to the Boss RC-300. Firstly, I'm going to cover a couple of the similarities. So both units have got 3 hours record time and 99 presets across the board. They all do undo and redo, and they have unlimited overdubs, and they also both output true stereo audio. Okay, so firstly the pros of this unit. I personally think the layout and design of this unit is superb. Due to the fact it's a tabletop looper, you have everything at your fingertips to adjust. If you're mid-set and something's a little bit too loud, you just turn down the track, you can adjust the input level, everything's right there. My main gripe with the RC-300 was everything was down by your feet, so if you were having an issue you'd have to dive down to the floor, start adjusting a load of dials, and there was no way to really make that look cool on stage. Everyone would know you were having a problem. They're like, "Well, he's suddenly on the floor trying to play guitar." Whereas here you can just quickly and subtly adjust something and nobody is the wiser. The input and output effects on this unit are surprisingly good. On all the other Boss loopers, they're just pointless, the effects, you know, they're just a marketing thing. Like, we've got some effects on this unit. These are really, really good. Personally, I don't use them, even though I just said they're really, really good. Everyone raves on about them, like, you've got to get the Boss RC-505, these effects are incredible. I had a good play about with them. I would say you can use them, especially if you're using this as a standalone looper. I run mine through Ableton Live though. I run everything from Ableton to the looper, so I have plenty of effects in there which are probably a little bit better quality and more options and easy to trigger. Main problem is for me, I'm playing the guitar, so I can't really take my hands off the guitar to click the effects buttons on here. It's a little bit fiddly. So, but you got these big dials to adjust them, you know, turn the delay up, whatever, and you have input and output effects, so you can affect the audio coming into the looper, and then you can also just affect the audio coming out if you don't want to record the effect into the looper pedal. You can only have one effect on at a time, so there's 3 options for 3 different effects, but you can only have one input and one output on at a time. So that means if you want to layer up the effects, you'd have to overdub and then change it, overdub. But my main problem with that is I like my looping to be quite concise. I don't like that sort of, you take 5 minutes to build up 3 tracks sort of thing with a bit of delay here and there and a few oohs and ahs. I like to make it where people in the crowd sort of, if they weren't watching, they'd think there's a band there. None of this ambient sort of taking ages, but if you're into that, that's fine. This might be for you. These effects might be for you. USB is pretty good on this too. You can use this as an audio interface, so you just plug it into your computer. So the way I have it running is I have Ableton Live and I have an aggregated device running through my laptop, so that includes my normal audio interface, my drum pads, and the Boss RC-505, so that's like one USB device chained together. And that means I don't use any cables in the back here. The only output I use is the phone jack for a click to my ears. The rest of the time I'm just running USB to input and output all the audio, which I think is pretty good. I think it's a solid unit for that. Now, I really love the play all track assign on this unit. So due to that being 5 tracks, you know, the chances are when you click play all, you're not going to want all 5 tracks to play at once, because you're most likely going to have maybe 2 or 3 tracks for the chorus and the rest the individual parts that you're going to bring in and out throughout the verses to make it a little bit interesting. I think this is really cool. You can, like, for example, you could assign 1, 3 and 4 to kick in on play all, which is great. It reduces the amount of tap dancing you have to do and it allows you to focus on the performance. It also at times as well, especially when you're using the click, if you maybe click play all on beat 3 of the bar, it'll then kick in on beat 1, so that gives you like a beat to then trigger something else or change your guitar setting to a solo or whatever. So it just gives you a little bit more time in between things to go about things a bit more methodically. The Boss RC-300 only outputs MP3. This outputs WAV, and instantly when I plugged this in, the first day I used it, I was like, wow, there's so much clarity. I was a bit more enthusiastic than wow, but seriously, the clarity on this unit is so much better than the MP3 coming out of the RC-300. In 2016, this unit got a firmware upgrade to firmware 2.0, and it added so many more features. Previously, this unit was synonymous with beatboxes that would just have it on a table and they do all that beatbox and stuff. Personally, I'm not really into that. In 2016, they added a lot more MIDI capability. So this especially enabled you to plug in external controllers that send MIDI data, like MIDI CC data, and now the unit, you can program absolutely everything to a MIDI foot controller or whatever you want to use elsewhere, and you can control the whole pedal on external controllers, which is exactly how I now run it. So I have the tabletop in the air, and then I have a pedal board at the bottom that's basically doing everything I can do with my hands on here, but then it means I can play the guitar still, and it works really, really good. The way you have to program it though, you have to maybe do one memory bank, you set it up exactly how you want it, then you save the memory, and then you just have to write that memory every single time you want to use a new bank. So I have one memory that's just set up as default, and every time I start a new song, when I'm planning my set, I'll just write that memory and then edit accordingly to that track and then resave it. It works really well. I think it's a really, really good feature. There was various other things they added in 2.0, which was the extended effects, more effects and stuff like that, but like I say, I don't use those effects. Now the cons with this unit, well, previously when I used the RC-300, I wasn't looping to a click, so I did everything free time. So half of my set is still free time looping, and then the other half of my set's the new stuff, which I use the RC-505 for. So for the first half, I'm still running the RC-505 as if it's an RC-300, so I run it in free loop, as I call it. So I essentially just have it set up exactly as a RC-300 would be. But what I've noticed is there's this strange thing. The only way I can describe it is loop quantization that kicks in. So I'll loop very tightly, and I think this is a very tight loop, and then I'll click playback, and it will alter what I've played just ever so slightly, like it's quantized it to some form of a grid. And I've tried switching this thing that is a setting on here called loop quantization. I've tried switching all that sort of stuff off, but it's still there. Like I still notice it, and I don't think drunk people in the crowd really notice it. But when you're playing, you can feel that wasn't what you just played coming back through, and it's a little bit off-putting when you're trying to play. So the RC-300 is much better for that sort of plug-and-play acoustic guitar looping, which is what I do in my first half of my set usually, and this is a bit. The other thing you could deem as a con, personally I think it's a pro, but that's just the way I have my rig set up, so I have everything hard mounted and we carry in the tables, and it's all pre-plugged. But if you're just gigging this in like a backpack, because this is super light, this unit is super light, if you're gigging this in the backpack and you're wanting to use it as a foot pedal too, it means you've got to bring two separate parts. You've got to bring the pedal, then you've got to bring a foot pedal, and then you've also got to maybe bring like a piano stand or something to put this on, so it's at table height, so you can use it. So that's a bit of a con, a bit of additional setting up, but I think it's worth it because you just have more options on stage if something's going wrong. Also, what I've noticed is, although the USB options are far greater than the RC-300, the fact you use it as an audio interface, when I used the RC-300 I could never get it to register at all with any of my computers, any of the drivers. It just would never work as an audio interface or anything. So this also has a MIDI clock via the USB that you can send out, but it has a bit of a fluctuation. It's not the best quality of clocks, you know, it's not the grandfather clock of MIDI clocks. It fluctuates quite a bit, so when I'm running this through Ableton, this has to be the master because the way the clock is, it's a bit funny. And when I've got external sync to this, it constantly is going, like, for example, 140, and that'd be 140.2, and then 0.5, and then maybe 141. So it means if you're trying to trigger samples from within Ableton, and you're using the click on board here, the click on board here is very stable. So if you've got this set at 140 BPM, it's 140 BPM the whole time. But the actual clock data that's being sent to other devices is fluctuating. So if you're trying to trigger something that's maybe on like in Ableton, you can have those quantize triggers where you click it just before the bar and it kicks in on the one. That means it never kicks in on what theoretically is the one of this, what you're hearing in your ear from this click. It's the one of the clock. So you can't really use that feature. I was a bit disappointed about on the with Ableton and the MIDI clock. So the Boss RC-300. Now this unit is super duper heavy. Compared to the RC-505, this thing is weighty. One of my main pros about this unit is it is all-in-one. You know, you just rack up to your gig, you pop this down, you plug your stuff in, and you're ready to play. But there is a lot of things I do not like about this unit, and right now it's the way this thing's heavy. One thing this unit does have over the RC-505 is it has these sub-outs just down here on the unit. This is really good, especially if you're just running the pedal on its own and you're plugging directly in. It means when you go and play somewhere, you can set your thing up, plug your instruments in, and then you can give the sound guy the main left and right output of the pedal, which will give him a direct feed of the loops, and then you can give him a sub out, which will then give him or her a direct feed of just the guitar and the microphone or whatever else you have plugged into the device. So then that just means they can adjust the levels accordingly back at the front of house, which I think is really, really good, because especially when you're running like a loop pedal, there's a high chance that there's something's going to be louder and quieter depending on which venue you're going to. So that's a really nice feature. The RC-505 does not have that sub-out option. You could use the phone jack, but then the headphone jack. But if you're using the headphones for your click or whatever you want to run in there, you're starting to get a bit complicated in how to get that audio out. Now this loop station has an expression pedal to the side here. I don't have any uses for this when I've used it. It triggers most of the onboard effects, but the effects are pretty flawed. Like there's a transpose thing that makes your guitar sound like a bass, but it doesn't really track very well and things like that. It's a bit wobbly if you hold the note for a long time. So this would turn your effects, whatever the amount and stuff like that. But you can reassign this to do other things. So you can one way I reassigned it was to adjust the volume of the tracks. So it just meant if I wanted to turn it down a bit, I could do that. But there's a high chance you'd always knock it, especially if you're not necessarily using it in like a pedal board form, it's always in the same place. If you're just using it on the floor as a unit, not in a case or anything, there's a high chance your muscle memory is going to be different every time you use it. So there was always a good chance you might slightly knock this, and then suddenly it's dead loud or the loops have gone off. So I soon just left this empty and didn't use it anymore. So it was kind of pointless and added extra weight to the unit that wasn't necessarily needed. But it's there if you want to do something with it. Now one thing that's really, really cool about the RC-300 is you can use the undo redo as it's a bit of a cheat, but it gives you a fourth track theoretically. Now you can't really undo and redo as seamlessly on the RC-505. There's a button you click undo/redo, and then you click which track you want to undo. Whereas on the RC-300 you can click record and then click play, and then you click record again to overdub, and then you hold it down for 2 seconds to undo that overdub. But then that means you then have that extra track, so you've overdubbed and then you've theoretically added a layer, and then you can remove that, so it gives you that sort of fourth track in a way. It's quite risky though, because you only have that one shot. If you double tap record accidentally the time you wanted to reintroduce it or remove it, it's then gone on to the next record, so you've missed your chance to get rid of it or introduce it, so you'd have to clear again or do it again depending on what it was. But it is there as a nice little thing if you've got something you just maybe want to bring in and bring out. So my main con with the RC-300 is the fact that the master output level is right by the play all button. So at times, and quite a lot, you sometimes would go and click play all, and you might catch your foot on this, and it might suddenly jump up or jump down, whatever. Mostly it would jump up, and you'd be like, oh, and then you'd have to dive down to the floor to turn it down, which really ruined the flow of the performance. Now, it didn't happen too often, but it has happened to me quite a few times, and it's been very frustrating. The clear function on this is quite a long time as well. Like on paper it says 2 seconds, and you think that's not very long, but in a track, you have to, if you wanted to clear track 1, you'd have to hold it down for 2 seconds, and then it's clear, and then you can do whatever with it. Whereas the beauty of the 505 is you just double tap on the stop button on the unit and it's cleared. So it's got a really quick way of clearing on that unit. I've often experienced a couple of crashes with this unit. Sometimes when you click play on track 1 and 2, in the past I'd had this thing where you click that and the drum machine would kick in. It only happened like a few times in my usage, but I never read anywhere that that was a shortcut to trigger the drum machine, but sometimes it might kick in. So one way to combat that, I just learned to just turn that down at the start of every gig, because when you reboot the unit, it's automatically at 100, despite where this knob is. So you have to just turn it down every time you boot with the unit. So if that does happen, you're none the wiser. The second glitch was, you might click play all, and then it would be playing, and then you click stop all, and then it might like almost do a jump thing, like you almost clicked it again, and then you might have to suddenly click it again, and it would happen the other way. Maybe you might click play, and then it might stop and then play, like you've accidentally clicked it twice, but I was 100% not clicking it twice on that like final click for it to do that. Definitely the weight is a con of this unit. It's hefty, but it means it can get chucked around quite a bit because it's all metal, and it's going to be okay. The USB on this, you can plug it into your computer and back it up and stuff like that, but it's meant to do the same as the RC-505, like use it as an audio interface, send MIDI clock data and all that, but it doesn't work. I have 2 of these pedals because my first one, the LED screen, sort of broke, and both of them didn't work, and I had all the drives and everything, but they didn't work on any of my computers and things. Also, the LED screen's a con on this one. It's just a little tiny orange thing, and the menus are really difficult to go between. Like, there's just menus within menus within menus. It's not very intuitive. It just feels a little bit dated, you know. It only outputs MP3 audio, which is quite noticeable. The quality dropped from time to time, especially when I upgraded my electric guitar amp setup to the Kemper. It sounded really crisp, and then it would go through this pedal, and you could tell that it was like, ugh. Due to everything being on the floor as well in this unit, it's just not really enjoyable to use. On my RC-505, I have every single song has its own preset, because I'm now looping to a click, and I'm triggering stuff in Ableton and things like that. But it's enjoyable to set up each track because it's at tabletop height. You just click edit, the menus flow. You can set all your individual tracks to have the correct amount of measures that you want, and it's really, really easy to just write new memories and create all the songs you want and how you want them to work. Whereas with this, the menu is terrible. You can do individual track measures on here, so this one could be 4 bars, 8 bars, 4 bars again, or 16 bars, but I never used that feature on this pedal because I just didn't enjoy using the menu, and also because it took so long to clear. It takes so long to clear the individual tracks. The one way I got around it was using the memory select button on here. As you can see, it's all scratched from where my foot was, but you'd just switch and turn it like that, and it would take you to a new memory, and that would almost act as a clear all button, because you were basically resetting a memory and you were going to the next memory bank. So I never used individual memory banks on here because that was my way of clearing, so it meant I would have used that and I'd have went on to a different song, because it was very difficult. You have to rotate your foot, and like, it's very awkward to change memory banks. You're not necessarily always going to go 1 memory bank, you might go 6 memory banks, so I never used individual things for that reason. But personally, if you're just going to be running an acoustic guitar, maybe a microphone through here, to loop with and a microphone through thing, but basically Ed Sheeran. If you're doing that, this is the pedal to go for, because you just get it out your bag, you plug your stuff in and you play. Whereas if you want to do something a bit cooler, not saying Ed Sheeran's not cool, but if you want to do something a bit cooler, you've got to get the RC-505. There's just so much more you can do with it. You can run the click and stuff. It's got a better MIDI clock than here, not perfect, but it's got a decent MIDI clock. You can run your clicks, you can run everything through USB if you want to run a laptop to try and reduce cabling and reduce weight overall on what you've got to take to a gig. You've got everything at tabletop height to adjust the volume levels. Really easy to set songs up because it's at tabletop height and it's really enjoyable to use. It feels a little bit more with it, you know, this just feels, this came out in 2011 I believe, and it feels like it's in 2011, you know. We're now in 2019. I know the Boss RC-505 came out in 2013, but it still feels a little bit newer, and the update they gave it in 2016 really unlocked it and brought it into the modern world. I do think it's time this unit was updated, but yeah, I go for the RC-505 personally. If I was buying a looper today, especially if you want to loop to a click and have quite concise song structures. So get the RC-505 personally, if you want to do something a bit more than Ed Sheeran.